Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. Michael Zuber, one rental at a time, back with the man, myth, the legend, Matt, the mortgage guy. How you doing, sir?
Just some guy on YouTube. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Dude, you're not some guy on YouTube, at least not to me and to my community. I know in just the last 48 hours or so, you've helped several members get through some pretty sticky situations to get their loans funded. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Yeah, for sure. It's a pleasure working with them. And I love, all the feedback and, even if we're doing things imperfect, if you've got feedback for us, how we can get better, we always appreciate it. But helping investors win, helping people win is fun.
Yeah.
That's the most fun I have as a mortgage broker.
That's awesome. Well, something I don't think we've ever talked about is mortgage rates and the fact that mortgage rates change every day. And sometimes they reprice multiple times a day. And the reason I want to bring this up with you is because I'm getting more and more people coming to me going, Michael, I should be locking in now because the Fed's going to raise half a point, like you keep saying, on March 10th, and then rates are going to shoot up a half a point again. And I need to remind them, well, no.
Right.
Mortgage rates move a lot faster and they've already priced in a lot of stuff. So let's just talk about all the things that are behind what now is a 4.03 30-year mortgage rate.
Right. Yeah. And I think, first and foremost for people watching so that, they're more educated and understand it better. Like you said, rates move every single day. Yes. And, the mortgage-backed security market, the movement of those is like the stock market where like Monday through Friday, you can watch mortgage bonds going up and down. Lenders are going to reprice based on that movement, reprice, mortgage rates get lower, get higher. It can happen 2 to 3 times a day. In the volatilist of markets, we're going to see 3 and 4 reprice where you might wake up in the morning and you're 3.875. And then by the time the afternoon comes and there's 4 worsenings, you're 4% or 4.05, exactly. Right? In one day. So you can't say, hey, I'm going to buy before March 10th because then I'm going to lock in this price. 1, it's changing every day. And 2, like you alluded to, the markets know what's coming. It's priced in. Yeah. On March 10th, if the Fed increases the Fed funds rate like by a half a point, is that going to affect mortgage rates? Maybe a little bit, but not much. We already know it's coming. And, just like Tesla or some company says what they've got going on in the future and they're looking at future earnings, that's built into today's stock price. You don't have to go earn it, right? And so mortgage rates work relatively similar. We can prognosticate. Is that the right word?
Sure. Why not?
Okay. Yeah. It sounded right.
Sounds right.
What's going to happen with future mortgage rates all we want, right? But you can't time it. It's kind of like trying to time the real estate market. Like, oh, I'm going to do it now because it's this. The only thing you've got guaranteed is, today's pricing is today's pricing. Yeah. And if you like it, lock it. I've said that 1,000 times. Boy, I hope people listen to that one because that, in retrospect, was some pretty gosh darn good advice.
Yeah. What I want to do is break down rates in more detail because people are hearing rates probably a lot more than they've heard in a while, and you're hearing rates are going up. So let's talk about the Fed's funds rate, which is really the only rate that Federal Reserve Jerome Powell has control over, right? They set that figure, right? What do banks charge banks for overnight lending? And that's what they call the Fed funds rate. It's today basically a quarter. And when you hear the Fed's moving a half or a quarter, that's the rate they are moving. Do I have that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that's the base rates. That's where all mortgages start, right? Is what is the Fed funds rate? Because if they're charging more, the 30-year will be more. If they're charging less, the 30-year, because that's where rates begin.
Right.
Then there's this thing called the 10-year treasury. 10-year treasury is important because most mortgages are transacted every 8 years. So a lot of people value mortgages or the 30-year around the 10-year because it is a great indicator. So again, the 10-year just crossed 2%. I don't recall a time, but maybe you will, of the 30-year ever being under 2%. That would be a pretty steep inversion.
Right. Never really was. And like for people that want to look at something besides rates to figure where rates are going. The 10-year treasury and 30-year mortgage rates, if you look at history, the trend is clear. They're correlated, right? And so you can take that, for simple math, let's look at it right now. The 10 years at pretty much 2.04. The 30-year fixed rate mortgage, 4.04. It's 2% higher. So if the 10-year treasury goes to 2.5, where do you think mortgage rates will be? About 4.5. Exactly. If it goes to 3, mortgage rates will be at about 5, right? And so those things are highly correlated. And, when it was 1.3, 1.4, I was just looking at December's 10-year treasury, right? It was probably about a 1.75 spread between the 10-year and mortgage rates. And I think that most people talk about it being 1.7 to 1.8 difference, not this 2% we're seeing right now. But the 10-year treasury went up, and along went the 30-year fixed rate mortgage. Yeah.
So these are just things we need to watch for. And again, what we're referring to now is there's a variability. It's sometimes the gap's 1.5, and sometimes it's 2.25. That is, are banks nervous about the future? Are they greedy? Right? Banks have their own sliding scale, and that sometimes they're going to want to stop lending. Yes, folks, there are some environments where banks don't want to lend. They get super nervous. Guess what? That gap jumps. Sometimes they want to push lending. That gap narrows. Is that fair to say?
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And then what are these things that we often hear and talk about called overlays?
Yeah. I mean, overlays refer to, extra rules put in by lenders, and it's all based on risk. How much risk does the lender want to take? There's going to be Fannie and Freddie that say, here's the rules to play. Here's everything that we need. We need income verified this way. We need verified assets this way. And then, minimum credit score and all those things. And then if you hear the term overlay from a lender says, hey, Fannie and Freddie require only a 620 credit score. We want 660 or better. Fannie and Freddie require 15% down on this product. We want 20. And in general, big banks are the most conservative. So they're going to have more overlays in place. Okay. Most of the retail lenders, the brokers, they're going to be more aggressive. And like you said, it'll change with time. Maybe, they'll become more conservative because, there's stuff going on in the economy or the company for whatever reason is like, hey, listen, we don't want to write a bunch of riskier paper, right? Stuff that's more risky. So overlays are essentially extra rules put in place to protect a lender. And, somebody came to me recently and was like, man, Bank of America won't use my rental income because I haven't had it on taxes for 2 years. Whereas a broker is going to say, the one you just acquired in October, get us a lease agreement. We'll use 75% of that. That's an overlay. That's an overlay from the bank saying, hey, we want to be super conservative. We need 2 years of rental history on that before we can count that as income. And, depending on where you go to get your loans, the most conservative are going to have more and more overlays. And the ones that are the most aggressive, just say 0 overlays. If Fannie and Freddie will take it, we will write it. And truth be told, right now in this environment, most lenders are writing pretty close to just Fannie and Freddie with very minimal overlays.
That is probably because the Fed has been buying a lot of mortgage-backed securities. And if they do get out of the market in March and become net sellers, that could change. Is that fair to say?
100%. I agree with you.
I hope people are hearing that because it's going to get different.
Right. And, that's the thing too, is people think that lending is strict now. I mean, it could get stricter. Yeah. I mean, it's only 1 decade ago, in 2011, 2012, we had the Zubers of the world and people with perfect credit and really good looking credit profiles get no answers. Right. And now
I got a kind no answer, and then I got a hell no from another bank.
Right. And, right now there's a good amount in place. And if I look at the numbers of the subprime days and so many loans written sub 620 credit score. As much as people don't like to hinge a lot on the credit score, that's your score on how good you handle debt.
Yeah.
So for somebody who's going to lend you money, give you debt, like they're going to look at that score.
Absolutely.
And right now, vast majority of stuff is being written for people with good credit profiles, with good credit scores. But it doesn't mean that it can't get even tighter.
Yeah. I mean, people don't want to hear this, but today you can get 10 investment loans. There was a time where it was 4. That was a very different game, right? Try to get, and when it was 4, Matt, you'll remember this, property was the cheapest I'd ever seen. Crazy.
Right. Yeah. And you know what is a crazy thought that I just had? There's a lot of talk and there's a lot of people that are like, we need to make it easier for first-time buyers. We need to make it easier for, folks who aren't big investors. As an investor myself, as somebody who works with a ton of investors, scares the shit out of me to think of going from being able to write 10 for somebody of the best type of loan, the Fannie Freddie one, and go to 4. But that might be a step. That might be a step that they take to say, hey, listen, investors keep beating out owner occupants. Investors keep beating out this person who's never owned a property. How can we level the playing field a little bit? That would be something that they could do. As much as I don't like it.
They could. This is the game. Again, people need to realize, right? There is a real estate market, sure, but there's a lending market. And lenders in my career, 21 years now, they change all the time. And you're right. They could say, we are going to go back to 4 investment loans. They could. I'm not saying they will. I'm saying they could. They could also bring out 40-year mortgages, fully amortized for owner occs, first-time buyers, nobody else. All of these things, right? If the other thing, we've talked about refinance demand falling 75% eventually. I now believe that purchase demand is going to fall 20% because people are going to stay in their home. They're not going to be the move-up buyers, which is going to take significant transactions out.
Mobility numbers are changing. I want to pull something out of what you just said and kind of tie together these last 3 minutes for folks. People know that when mortgage rates change, it affects how much somebody can buy. That can affect real estate.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not forget that, like you were just saying, the rules of lending, the rules of mortgage can have the same, if not more of an effect. And when, like you said, we come out with a 40-year mortgage and that opens up things, that can make real estate prices go up because it affects demand. If it gets harder and nobody can finance properties, demand is going to plummet because people aren't going to apply. They won't be able to buy. And so, there's a lot of different strings that can be pulled. One is interest rates, but other is accessibility and lendability and things like that. So I wasn't thinking about this stuff before we started this conversation, but it's a good one.
No, it absolutely is. I think it's very important for people to realize. That's why it was in my first book, is that you got to watch lending. Lending could change a market all by itself. And this current administration, it would not surprise me if they said investors bad, first time home buyers good. And that means no loans for you, more loans for you. Not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying it could happen.
Right. And I think too, that from my perspective, these are all hypotheticals.
Oh yeah.
In the short term, I think we might go the other way.
Oh,
I
really?
think that all these lenders with more underwriters than they need, more employees that have hired like crazy, are going to get more aggressive to get the diminishing number of mortgage applications that are coming in, both refinance and purchase. And so, getting more aggressive means a little bit more risk, a little bit more loose. And that's my personal opinion based on what I see with, shrinking margins and other things going on in the mortgage industry as refinance dwindles. I think purchase applications were pretty flat week over week.
1%.
Yeah. It's more competitive, and there's a couple different ways that you can get business as a mortgage business. You change your price or you change your offerings.
It's that easy. So again, folks, mortgage rates change every day, sometimes multiple times a day. Don't just think, hey, the Fed moves and then the mortgage, it doesn't work that way. There's many more layers to this. That's why you have to work with a professional like Matt, the mortgage guy. How do you want them to reach out?
Go to greatmortgagebroker.com. We've got a couple hundred people filling out that form every month, and we're getting in contact within a couple hours. We're happy to help. Greatmortgagebroker.com. Let us know where you're at and how we can help. We'll talk soon.
Yep. And the link is below in case you didn't get that. Again, I strongly suggest you reach out. Even if you're working with someone else, get somebody that I trust to look at it because you might be taken advantage of. Thanks, buddy. Take care.
Thank you.